Because I need to speak to now.
Okay, we're going live. Right, good morning everyone and welcome to the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee today, Thursday the 12th of December 2024. For the benefit of the public, I'm Councillor Dave Bolwell, Chair of this committee. My Vice Chair is Councillor Neil Ising. The meeting is being live streamed and the recording will also be available to view on the website after the meeting. By attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. Can I remind members to introduce themselves before they speak, and that in this room there are no desk microphones, so any audio will be picked up whilst the meeting is being live streamed. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited. All attendees must comply with a ruling of the Chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. For those using Teams, please ensure microphones are on mute and your device volume is set to 0 to maintain audio quality. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. No material is to be circulated to members of the committee. We have 5 applications to determine today. The case officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak to address the committee. Each speaker has 3 minutes, following which the committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officer before moving on to the debate. I would like to introduce the officers involved in today's meeting. Find them. The officers involved are Anne Collins, Development Management Area Manager, Phil Crowther, Legal Business Partner, Regulatory, Matthew Pochin-Hawkes, Lead Project Officer, Steve Tapscott, Senior Planning Officer, Rob Piggott, Planning Officer, Josh Kennedy, Democratic Services Officer, and John Miles, Democratic Services Officer. I will now also conduct the role of committee members. Belinda Borden. Morning, Belinda. Louise Bown. Morning, Louise. Simon Christopher. Simon. Craig Monks.
Morning, Chair.
Morning, Craig. David Northam.
Good morning.
Morning, David. Louis O'Leary.
Morning, Chairman.
Morning, Louis. Pete Roper.
Good morning, Chair.
Morning, Pete. David Shortell.
Good morning, Chairman.
And morning, David. And last but not least, Kate Weller.
Morning.
Morning, Kate. Thank you. Apologies, Josh, please.
Yep, so we've received apologies today from Councillor Paul Kimber.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member have any declaration of interest you wish to make? Councillor Northam.
Thank you. Councillor Northam, Upwey Broadway Ward, Weymouth. Not sure if I need to do that at this point, but never mind. Item Redlands, which is item 5, I voted. This came up to the Weymouth Town Council planning licensing meeting and was moved into the no objection, i.e. support category. Was voted on going forward unanimously, and I was part of that vote. So I would like to speak as ward member rather than member of the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Northam. And that one is item 7, isn't it? Redlands Community Sports Hub.
You're correct, I'm wrong.
That's okay, thank you, just for clarity. So,
Oh, sorry. Also, I'm.
oh, sorry, Louise, I didn't see you.
I didn't. Item 8, the bus shelters in my ward. So I'm Louise Bound, member for
Yeah.
Redpole, and
Is there any declaration of interest you wish to
I
make?
don't. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm coming to it fresh, if that's what you mean. I thought I had to declare it.
It's good for information, but I don't think that
Okay,
counts
fine.
as a pecuniary interest. Or
Thank you.
otherwise.
Chair, simply because an application is in a councillor's ward doesn't make it a predetermination. If you'd reached a decision or expressed a view in public, then it might be different. But
Okay.
if you come into it fresh, that's fine.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
No, it's okay. Thank you for asking. Item 3, to agree and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of October 2024. Members are content that the minutes are a true record of the meeting held, and I will sign them as correct later. Everybody happy? Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to item 4, members of the public registered to speak can be given the opportunity to speak now if they wish. or wait for their item to be presented? I believe you wish to wait for your item to be presented. Okay, thank you. Right, moving on to item 5, planning applications. The first one is 1/D/11/002012, Southwest Quadrant, St Michael's Trading Estate, Bridport. This will be introduced by Matthew Pochin-Hawks. Matthew?
Morning, everyone. Okay, many of you may recognise this application. It's a very historic application for mixed-use development in St Michael's Trading Estate, Bridport. It's a development to provide an outline to provide 83 new homes, a mix of houses and flats, new refurbished commercial space, parking, access and flood wall repairs, as well as landscaping. The application was last reported to Planning Committee in June 2023, where the Planning Committee resolved to grant planning permission subject to planning conditions and a 106. The only reason why we're bringing this item back to Planning Committee again is because in the period between the resolution and trying to finalise the section 106, the council issued the level 1 strategic flood risk assessment, and that looks at flood risk across the whole council area. And because of that, it was necessary to get a flood risk assessment addendum from the applicant, that to be reviewed by the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority, and it's resulted in amended conditions as set out in the report. So I'm just prefacing that overview of where we are today, and it's right to do a kind of full presentation on the scheme. Many of you councillors would have been at the June committee last year, so I'll take it from the top. And here we go. This is the site, southwest corner of Bridport. It comprises the majority of the Brid 5 site allocation within the local plan, excluding the northeast corner here, which are the listed buildings, part of the next item on the agenda. And it also includes land on St Michael's Island here. Both the local plan and the Bridport neighbourhood plan allocate the site for a mix of uses, and the allocation is there on screen. This plan shows an aerial view of the site in the surrounding area. The site is bound to the car park to the north, with the police station building here. To the east is St Michael's Lane. To the south is Foundry Lane. The west is the River Bray open space, which includes children's play space, tennis courts and a skate park, and that's St Michael's Island here. So the site is generally previously developed, apart from St Michael's Island. And buildings on it are generally 1 to 3 stories, and it's got a incredible heritage on rope and cordage making in some of the listed buildings here. So this plan shows the overview of the designations and constraints, and it's also out in the report, but just in summary, the site is within the defined development boundary. It falls within the Bridport conservation area, forming much of the southwest quadrant area. It includes statutory listed buildings here in orange, and a number of non-designated heritage assets in blue. As I said, it's in the allocations in the local plan and neighbourhood plan, and the national landscape designation, formerly area of outstanding natural beauty, washes over the whole of the site and Bridport. Much of the site is in flood zones 2 and 3. And there's a flood wall along the western boundary. So just looking at the heritage assets in and around the site, the only listed building within this outline application is the southern wing of 40 St Michael's Lane. So 40 St Michael's Lane is here, and these buildings to the rear are also listed. But in this outline application, we've just got this wing of the building. There are a number of non-designated heritage assets. Just to point them out, we have the auction house building here, number 2, the Stover building in the centre of the site, number 3. This is the Northlight building. We have the Tarring block, the Red Light building down here, red light building is there, and we have the tower building here. So there are a number of non-designated heritage assets in the site. Nearby, as we know, Bridport is a historic town with lots of listed buildings, and there are a number nearby to this along St Michael's Lane, and the significance of those assets are explained in the appendices to the committee. So I'm just going to take you through some site photos. There's quite a few site photos. I think it's just helpful to get an overview of the site. And just starting from the northwest corner of the site, this is the tin shed building in photos 1 and 2, which is in fact a non-designated heritage despite its very poor state of repair. And then as you look east from that building, you look towards the auction house here and the rear of the listed buildings and Lilliput buildings. That's the auction house here, and these are just outside of the application site, the outline application site. But the development has potential to affect the setting of those assets. Looking east, this is the historic rope walk between the two wings of the listed building. This falling within the outline application site, and this within the detailed. You can see the kind of historic nature of that space. Photos 2 and 3. This is the western end of the southern wing of the listed building, and then we have the Stover building, which hosts the former Trick Factory skate park, and the southern elevation of the Stover building. Moving around the site, this is the southern side of the Stover building, the rear of the Tarring block, an alleyway here looking towards St Michael's Lane, and you can see this building here is the hairdressers, and you can see a small building here, the Stone building. And what you're probably getting an impression of from these photos is the site is in a very kind of mixed state of repair. This building is probably the worst on the site, but others are unoccupied. They can't be occupied for various reasons, and others are occupied. Looking from St Michael's Lane, you can see the Snips building here, and then this is a 3-story residential building which is outside of the application site, but within the trading estate and fronting onto St Michael's Lane. On St Michael's Lane, here you have the rear of these sheds, these units, and there are locally listed buildings as well of 66 and 68 St Michael's Lane, which are just outside of the application site, but a little bit further down the road. These photos are on the southern part of the site. You've got the tower building, which is a kind of landmark building on the south side of the site, and the home to Clockwork Records. It's the tallest building in the site. Moving round west, you've got the cattle market building here, and further round you can see the red brick building in the corner of the river, which runs along the western boundary. Again, this just shows the red brick building a bit closer up, and you can see the state of repair of the state of the current St Michael's Island and the river down there, and the relationship with the kind of that's the wall that the river wall that runs along the side of the site. And finally, just showing St Michael's Lane again, this is the front of the listed building, number 40 St Michael's Lane. Which is part of the detailed application, but again, it's within the setting of this application. And then you've got the character of St Michael's Lane, the Grade 2 listed properties up there, which are quite simple, charming properties of 2 stories. So coming on to the proposed development, this is an outline application. Access, layout, and scale are in detail, and appearance and landscaping are reserved. The proposal is for mixed-use development of the site, partial and full demolition of some of the existing buildings, and construction of 83 dwellings, a mix of homes, houses, apartments, and you can see the mix on screen here. This is also in the appendices to the report. There are 14 affordable dwellings, which amounts to 15% overall, and they would all be provided within the St Michael's Lane building on the inside of the site. And viability was looked at in quite a lot of detail in the June 20 2023 committee, and that was found to be the viable amount. There is a refurbishment of commercial space, and on screen here you've got the breakdown for the outline application and the detail application and the total there. So there is a net reduction of total space overall, but there's an improvement in the quality of that space. There's car parking to go alongside all of this. In total, 160 spaces, 1 space per dwelling, plus space for visitors and the commercial uses. There's new vehicle and pedestrian access, and then down the side here, I've just tried to give an overview of the planning history, and it is this application has been in for a very long time. It's originally submitted and validated back in 2012, and we had an initial planning committee in 2012 where resolution was granted to approve the application, but before the application could be granted, their listed building designation was extended within the site, which meant the applicant had to submit a detailed planning application as well as the outline. That application came back to planning committee in 2017, where there was again a resolution to approve. But before the section 106 could be signed, there was a negotiation then on affordable housing and viability, which brought it back to committee, where there was again a resolution to approve. And now we find ourselves with the application again in front of us, because we were very close to issuing the decision, but we weren't sure about flood risk and whether the level 1 strategic flood risk assessment would have changed any of the conditions. So that's been the focus of this exercise. Just look at the proposed demolitions within the site. The buildings in red are the ones that are proposed to be demolished, and of those, most of them are non-designated heritage assets, but there are 2 here, the tin sheds and the stove building, which are proposed to be demolished. And there's a condition there which requires the tin sheds to be reused if possible within the Cattle Market Square. This is the master plan for the site. Important to note, access, layout and scale are fixed, and landscaping and appearance are reserved matters. We have 5 rows of terraced houses on the western side of the site, divided by this new road that comes through the site, and that generally divides the site into residential and commercial, and the east-west orientation reflects the historic rope walks between the listed building here. There are 2 apartment blocks, the St Michael's Lane building here, which is where the affordable housing is proposed, and also within the Stover building. So the Stover building is commercial on the ground floor, but with apartments above. The buildings will be built on brownfield land, and the existing buildings here will be refurbished for commercial space and upgraded. There's also a strip along the western side of the site for offsetting against the river as required by the EA. And this is just this illustrative sketch showing the site a bit clearer, and you can see that east-west orientation of buildings. In terms of phasing, this is fairly complex. Looked into it in a very detailed way before the June 2023 committee, and the reason for that was to make sure that phasing worked from a viability perspective, and that the affordable housing would be delivered at appropriate time. So what's been worked up in the draft section 106 is that the affordable housing, just highlighted here in phase 2, shown in purple, that needs to be started before the first private dwelling is sold, and before half of the market dwellings are sold. All of the affordable homes need to be ready for occupation, but the site is generally phased west to east, with phase 1 being the private homes on the west side of the site, and then coming over to the refurbishment on the east side of the site. And you've got the rough timescales there on the screen. The planning benefits, they are significant. Sort of 69 new market homes, 14 dwellings. We have open space. There are biodiversity net gains, refurbishment of new employment space. Yes, there is a net reduction, but as set out in the appendices to the report, there's a improvement in quality And these are the key planning issues for the whole of the site. Because this reconsultation relates to the flood risk matters, I'm just going to focus on that. And the applicant, once the level 1 strategic flood risk assessment was published, the applicant produced a flood risk assessment to assess the implications on the site and whether the buildings will be safe for their lifetime. There was an iterative process with the Environment Agency of going through that assessment process, but overall the EA has confirmed that they have no objection subject to conditions, and some of those conditions that were previously put on in the June committee have been amended, which is why he needs to come back to committee, because there's a link in those conditions. So there's no objection from the EA, there's no objection from the lead local flood authority. There are some new material considerations which have come into place since June 2023, including the 2023 MPPF and soon to be the 24 MPPF. So the new statutory duty on AONB's national landscapes, and there's changes to affordable housing need, which has gone up in Dorset and specifically in Bridport. That's been considered in the report, and the conclusions remain unchanged about the recommendation.
Matthew, sorry, could I
Yeah.
stop you there on the recommendation? Anne, could you please?
Yes.
I was waiting for a moment to say it. So due to the changes in the MPPF that are going to be announced probably at 11 o'clock this morning, it will affect the decision-making process of this committee. Hannah's got a statement to make, and this will apply to every single application that we have before us today. So,
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, we circulated an update sheet late yesterday afternoon, and you'll see that the recommendation for each application is amended. We were always aware, well, I say we were always aware, we were aware by the beginning of the week that the MPPF was going to be published this week, and word yesterday, well, the government announced yesterday that it would be today, and the word on the street is probably at 11 o'clock. Obviously, we don't know exactly what that MPPF is going to say, and from the time of publication, it becomes a material consideration. So officers are recommending that the recommendation for each application is changed to delegate authority to the head of planning and the service manager for development management enforcement to approve subjects, in this case for section 106 and conditions, but also that should the MPPF be published today prior to any kind of decision being issued on all the applications, that officers will then review the MPPF and consider whether anything in the MPPF would have likely caused an alteration to members' considerations. We will summarise that in a table, which we will then share with the chair of the committee. And only if both officers and the chair of the committee are happy that nothing's changed, nothing has materially changed, will we go on and issue a decision. If we consider something has materially changed as a result of the publication today, then we will be bringing these applications back to the next available planning committee, which obviously would like to be January. But for some of these applications, I think we can be fairly confident that probably nothing will alter in respect to them, but some of them we're less sure. So hence our amended recommendation to you as a committee for each application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. So Matthew, would you like to carry on with your
Yeah,
recommendation?
just briefly to add what Anne said. We've obviously looked at the consultation draft MPPF that came out in the summer, and there's no red flags in that which indicates that officers should be recommending something different or amending the conditions that are set out. But we don't know what the new MPPF will say, so that's why the recommendation there is amended, just to allow that review process to happen. So that's on screen, it's in the update sheet. The section 106 items remain the same as previously, and that section 106 is well progressed. It requires the 14 affordable homes and a mix of social and affordable rent and intermediate homes split 70-30 as per the local plan, and that would tie the provision across the detailed outline application, which I'll come on to on the next item. And then the other section 106 heads of term is for the refurbishment scheme for those buildings as set out in the design and access statement, and that's because a lot of the buildings are supposed to be retained, and it's necessary to tie down those improvements for the existing buildings to make sure that there is a improvement in quality overall. These are the conditions, summary of the conditions that have been, and I just note the ones that have been updated from the last committee, and these generally relate to flood risk, but there are some other things in there as well, which the Environment Agency have picked up, and you know been amended slightly as well from our review. So there's the Stover building condition here. The amendment on that is just to require that there's evidence of a contract for demolition and replacement of the building before it's demolished. Condition 14 here on biodiversity, as suggested by the Environment Agency, there's a specific condition on mitigation for water voles and the control of protected plant species, Japanese knotweed, which shouldn't be on the site. Condition 16, there's updates there to the river walk conditions to refer to the applicant's new flood risk assessment addendum, and also amendments to condition 23 and 24 here on surface water to require that there isn't a pumped solution for surface water drainage, and there's some minor amendments to land contamination conditions as well from the Environment Agency, but generally not a lot's fundamentally changed, and we can conclude that will be safe for its lifetime with these conditions in place in light of the new level 1 strategic flood risk assessment. So that is recommendation A, and recommendation B is that if the section 106 isn't completed within 6 months or any of the timescales agreed with the service manager ahead of planning, then the application is refused for that reason on screen. So that concludes my my presentation. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Matthew. There are no public speakers on this particular application, so I'd like to ask members if they have any questions for the planning officer before we move into debate. Councillor Weller.
It's out of interest more than anything else, Chairman. Do we have a social landlord on board on this scheme already, or are they still negotiating with someone?
Yeah, sorry, Matthew, please.
Yeah, just getting used to the new format.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to get used to the new format.
Sideways. No, there isn't a named affordable housing provider on the board. There had been in the past, but there isn't a named provider that I'm aware of now. I mean, you know, certainly the applicant may well be having discussions with a number of providers.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, Councillor Northam.
Can I talk a little bit about the affordable housing decision? And I note that this is linked to the next agenda item, which offers a further 9 homes, but that means that the percentage you quoted of the affordable homes across both sites is less than 15%. So I wonder how that came about, given I think the target is 35% in the Bridport area, so that's significantly down on that. And I can't remember whether it's House 1 or House 2 says that the affordable houses should be distributed across the development rather than all in one block. So what we've created is a block of, and the other thing it says is that there should be a spread of dwelling sizes, but all we've got is all the 2 bedrooms in one space, which doesn't seem in line with the reasons why those policies exist, which is to stop that. So I'm a little concerned. I'd like to understand the background a bit more, please.
Yeah, sure. That this was the kind of key focus of the June 2023 committee, and before it got to that committee, the applicant was proposing 22 units, which equated to 24%. So it was still below the policy target. And the reasons for that change to 14 units and 15% overall, so that's including the 9 units in the detailed scheme, was because of viability. And we went through a detailed review exercise with a viability with the DVS, who were instructed by the council. They looked at the applicant's viability appraisal, and their costings and their revenues that were coming out of that. And they did a detailed review on all of those costs. I mean, this site had some unusual, abnormal costs with the flooding and the repairs to the historic buildings and the heritage that goes into that. And the conclusion of that exercise back in 2023 it is set out in the appendices to the report from DVS. With the scheme would only be viable with 7 homes. So they actually thought it would be viable with fewer homes than what the applicant was proposing. So what we negotiated with the applicant was an increased number of affordable homes, but a kind of substandard mix and layout, because ideally in planning policy terms you want affordable housing to be pepper potted around a development so that affordable occupiers have a choice of homes that might be suitable. But here we've got all the homes within the St Michael's Lane building. You've got 2 1-beds and you've got 12 2-beds. There is a high need for that type of affordable housing within Bridport, and that was backed up by the Housing Enabling Team's comments to the June 2023 committee. So, despite it isn't the ideal mix and spread, but what we're getting here is a higher number, and that is considered acceptable, and the reduced percentage is considered justified under Policy House 1, which does set out that a lower level can be justified where there are good reasons to bring the development forward, and you've got viability that shows that it's not economically viable to do so. So we had the viability, and there are very good reasons to bring this development forward, because it's an allocation, a key brownfield site. It delivers a lot of benefits in terms of jobs, housing, and affordable housing. Yes, the lower provision, but it's still a benefit for the scheme. So I hope that gives you a good kind of overview.
It makes me understand. It doesn't make me happy, but I understand the background. What I'd ask is that when the NPPF revisions are published, which I know emphasises the need for social housing, that's taken into account, because if that emphasis of social housing, there's already money thrown out to the partnership providers for affordable houses, the 500 million, that money changes the viability picture. And I think that might be worth a revision. I'm appalled a little bit that the viability assessment is so low for the site. So I'd ask whether that can be considered, because in the light of the revised NPPF, I know it can't be considered in the situation we're in at the moment because it's already got outlined, but the NPPF may change that.
I mean, we got the updated recommendation, so we'll have a look at that. I mean, the consultation draft talks about policy setting out a portion of social rented homes, rather than and then in respect of decisions, it talks about a mix of kind of ownership and rental products, which this development achieves, because you've got the rented and you've got the shared ownership. So under the consultation draft, it looks acceptable, but we'll obviously take that away and liaise with the chair about any other implications.
Any other comments of Councillor Borden?
Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth. On that same topic, I'm just curious, with when you've quoted the increase in number of people looking for social affordable housing in the Bridport area, how far does your area extend? Because, for example, Lyme Regis and Charmouth don't have any space, so therefore people in our area are kind of almost expected to be looking further afield.
Yeah.
So I've got a few other questions. Do you want to do them one by one, or?
Yeah,
it's up to you. Do you want to take them in turn or all
of
them?
I'll respond all the time.
Thank you, Willie.
Yeah, good question. I don't know the exact kind of boundary of that. our housing enabling team manage, the areas that, people choose as their preferred area that, they want affordable housing, and that was, the area of Bridport. I'm not sure exactly, the lines of that. I assume it probably follows ward boundaries, but yeah, I can potentially find that out post meeting and
Thanks, yeah,
let
I'd be
you know.
interested. So this is a bit of a random question, but in the unlikely event, or right, let me rephrase this. In the event that a lovely local transport plan would come up with the opportunity to develop the bus station in Bridport, would this proposal have any impact on that? I don't, from looking at it, I can't see that it would, but would you like to comment as to whether or not it might prevent any future development of the bus station? Is that not a?
Could I ask Anne to?
Yeah, Chair,
please?
we're only considering the application in
Yes.
front of us.
Okay.
That is not a relevant material consideration at this
Okay.
time.
Do apologise,
That's
Councillor
all right,
Ward,
no worries. And then just quickly on the there's mention of the, is it St Michael's Island?
Yeah.
Are there changes expected to the facilities there, like the tennis club and the play park and the skate park?
So St Michael's Island is the bit of inaccessible land in the middle,
Yeah.
and that's just proposed to be managed for ecological reasons.
Okay.
On the other side of the river, where the skate park and everything else
Oh, I
is,
see. Okay. Sorry, yeah.
there aren't any direct proposals for this scheme to contribute to it. I mean, it would be still liable, so a proportion of those still receipts would go towards Bridport Town Council, and they could, use that funding as they see fit. And there's also the goes to Dorset Council as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Any
Different topic.
Councillor Northern, please.
First time in planning meeting, I've heard locally listed buildings mentioned, so I'm not quite sure what local listing status gives to buildings, and I wasn't quite sure from your presentation whether any of the locally listed buildings were being demolished. I think you implied that tin shed might be. But beyond that, it is an area of the Roport, and that heritage of Bridport is quite valuable. Is the developer also committing to develop the buildings which are currently unused, to refurbish them so that they have commercial value? Because I didn't hear too much about that in your summary. Do you expand a bit on that?
Yeah. So the non-designated heritage assets, they are generally identified in conservation area appraisals. And we've got the Bridport conservation area appraisal that talks about a lot of buildings and says that they're of heritage value, but they're not actually designated by Historic England. So that's how their kind of designation has come about. And there's two within the site which are proposed to be demolished. Well, the tin shed and the stove building. Well, there's a condition there that requires that the tin sheds are reused around Cat Market Square. And the implication of demolishing or harming a non-designated heritage asset through development in its setting is that it engages the NPPF tests on non-designated heritage assets, and that requires a straight kind of a balancing exercise of the benefits of the proposal against the harm of demolishing those buildings. That balancing exercise is set out in the appendices to the report, and it's concluded that the development is acceptable with the demolition of those buildings.
Any more clarifications or technical questions for the officer? If not, we'll open the floor for debate, please. Oh, sorry, Matthew.
Apologies, Councillor Northam. I realised I didn't answer your second question.
What's being done to refurbish and repurpose
Okay.
the buildings?
Yeah, the refurbishing, that is all tied down in the section 106. It's quite a detailed way in the design access statement. So those retained buildings would be refurbished and made usable and better suited to kind of modern occupier requirements.
Sorry, I'd read that, so I thought it'd be said. I do apologise, Councillor. So again, if questions are finished, Floor is open for debate. Who would like to start, please? I'm quite happy to go around the room one by one. Councillor O'Leary.
I'm happy to propose, Chair.
Propose and suppose. Sorry, what are you proposing?
Happy to propose a recommendation as laid out.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor O'Leary.
Can I have a second?
I will second it.
Councillor Weller will second it. You happy with this?
Okay, update sheet.
As per the update sheet. Thank you. So all those in favour, please raise your hands. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 6, application WD/D/16/002852. Lilliput Buildings adjoining 40 St Michael's Lane, St Michael's Estate, Bridport, DT6 3TP. No speakers again, and it's introduced by Matthew again. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so this application relates to the northeast corner of the site and the listed buildings. And again, the reason why it's coming back to planning committee is solely because of the level 1 strategic flood risk assessment, the need for the FRA and reconsultation with EA and LLFA. I will need to do a kind of a brief full presentation on this one, just to give the application, but we know the location of the site from the previous presentation was within the same designations of the local plan and the neighbourhood plan. We've seen the aerial view in the last presentation. The constraints are similar, but just to point out that it includes that north wing of 40 St Michael's Lane and the frontage of it as well. On St Michael's Lane. And again, just immediately around it, there are non-designated heritage assets from which the proposed development has a kind of indirect effect on, and there are a number of St Michael's Lane itself. This is the building, that's the front of it, and just looking up and down St Michael's Lane and some of the other buildings for context. And yeah, just looking at the back of the Lilliput buildings. This is the that's the police station there, which is outside of the application boundary. That's the car park. And then these gay blended units are proposed to be demolished, as is this building here. As you can see, they're not really of any architectural merit, but they attach to the listed building. And then you've got the listed building proper here and the kind of rope walk in between that. And this is the rope walk, the grade 2 listed part of the building that is of value. And just to point out that there isn't an access through here at the moment to St Michael's Lane, and you can see the kind of tight character of that space. The proposed development is for 9 two-bed flats and new light industrial space. Overall, there is a slight reduction in the amount of space in this application, just 47 square meters, but there's an improvement in the quality and usability of that space. And yeah, as I've mentioned, it's just being brought back to committee again on the matter of flood risk. So to go through the proposed plans, as you saw in the photos, those kind of new additions to the building are proposed to be demolished to the northwest. And there's a small demolition at first floor level as well. The proposal, these colours just denote different units within the refurbished building. So you've got 6 units in total, some of which are spread over a couple of floors. So the important thing is they're different size units, so they suit different occupiers who might take this space. There is also that's the residential access to the units above. So this is the unit, the commercial unit that comes up to the first floor, and then as you can see, you've got the apartment buildings here There are 7 flats in total at this level, and then at the second floor level there are a further 2 flats. That's the roof plan. The design has been worked up in detail over the years to respond to historic England and the listing of this building, and you can see the new building, the new replacement part of the building here steps up away from the rope walk, and the idea is that you stand in the rope walk and you're not seeing that new element, and the design of the new part of the building very much takes its inspiration from the listed building and some of the non-designated heritage assets on site. So that's the proposed elevation, west elevation of one of the parts of the building, and you can see how it takes some of the inspiration from the auction house building in terms of windows and doors, and the gable end is a nice feature at that entrance to the site. The phasing, we've seen that in the previous presentation, but just to point out on this one that the new build element is in phase 1 of the scheme, and the refurbishment of the rest of the listed building is within phase 3 there, and that phasing would be tied down in the section 106. So just in terms of affordable housing, there you've got the 14 units overall with 15%, and that is tied. Obviously, none of that's provided within the detailed element of the application, but it's tied down and secured through the section 106 in the outline scheme. And as I've mentioned, there is that reduction in space overall, but there's an improvement in quality. There are a number of benefits of this scheme as well. The 9 homes does make a material benefit to the housing. There are also small biodiversity net gains, and you have the refurbishment of the listed building as well. The key planning issues, they're assessed in detail in the report and appendices. Just to mention on flood risk and drainage, which is the only item that's needed a kind of a full review, is the same as the presentation we've just had, that the applicant produced the flood risk assessment. There's an iterative review with the Environment Agency, and they have no objection subject to conditions. So the recommendation is the same in terms of the section 106, tying down the affordable housing and the refurbishment. As previously mentioned, there's the NPPF caveat as well, that we will review things for taking a decision forward. And from the draft consultation version, there's nothing in it that indicates we would be refusing or granting subject to different conditions. And then these are the planning conditions as well. And some of these are amended to take account of what the Environment Agencies come back on in terms of the flood risk conditions, surface water drainage, and there's a slight change to the land contamination condition to make it clearer as well. So that's recommendation A. Recommendation B is to refuse within 6 months or other timescales if the section 106 isn't agreed. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Matthew. Very clear. Again, members, any questions of a technical or clarification for the officer? Councillor Northern.
Councillor Northern, from Upwey and Broadway in Weymouth. Again, harping on a bit about the affordable homes provision. It's 9 homes being recommended. Does that mean doesn't have to provide any affordable homes? But I can't understand why this has been allowed to go forward as a separate application to the previous application, because they are adjacent, they're phased together. It seems like a ploy to reduce the number of affordable houses. Could you comment on that, please?
Yeah. So the application was originally submitted as an outline application, but because the building started back in 2012, but because Historic England extended the listing midway through the determination process, it meant the applicant had to provide further details on exactly what they were doing to that building. And you can't use an outline application for change of use. So they were essentially forced to submit a detailed application, and that's what they did. I can't recall the date, but it was after the 2013 planning committee. So that's why we put 2 applications. But what the section 106 proposes to do is to tie the outline and the detailed elements together, so that although there's no affordable housing provided in this detailed application, the phasing is tied down in the 106, and it has to be provided in line with the phasing set out. And they won't be able to, the proposed wording is that they won't be able to occupy any of the market homes until they've started the affordable housing. So that's tied down in the section 106.
Yes.
Does this mean that any developer with an outline planning permission can break it into parts of 9 units and get the 9 units through on the basis that they don't need affordable homes? Because that's what it looks like to me.
And we've assessed affordable housing on a total basis across the whole scheme, and viability has been reviewed on a total basis on the cost of everything in the outline, everything in the detailed, and all the values generated by both of those. So we and our advisors, DVS, essentially treated this as one application. They haven't put forward an argument to say that it's not viable on one but viable and the other. It's been assessed across the board. So I think that's the kind of that's a fair way of approaching it on this side.
So it's not a way for developers to work around the system.
I can't, it's not material for this
I
application.
think we couldn't possibly comment on that, Councillor Northern, but I think the facts before us are that this site is been crying out for redevelopment. It's been really, really well assessed for viability, and I know from listening to Bridport Town Council, they're desperate to get anything almost on there, and if it's not viable to put in more homes on, it's not. I agree with you. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but sometimes reality we have to. I think Matthew has put it forward quite clearly. Anne, is there anything you'd like to add on that score? Or is that okay? Any more questions for clarification? Okay, in that case, I will open the floor to debate. Councillor O'Leary.
I'd like to recommend the proposals for recommendation for approval.
Accordance with the update sheet.
Yes. The
Lovely,
update sheet
thank
and PPF is as of 11.
Councillor Weller.
Councillor Weller, Rodwell and White. I'm very happy to second this, and as a comment to Councillor Northern, and I applaud your anxiety for the affordable homes, because we all know that we need it right across Dorset, but we also know over many years that Bridport and its surrounding area desperately need these 1 and 2 bedroom properties, and if we can't get them as affordable, at least we can get them, and that's really important. And this area is crying out for attention. It will only deteriorate even worse if we don't get on and get this started, because this particular application, I think I'm right in saying, I remember talking about it in 2012. I'm too old to keep talking about these things, so I'd really like us to approve it.
Right, so we have a proposal to approve this in accordance with the officer's recommendation and the update sheet. So all those in favour, please show of hands. Thank you, and again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next, we move on to item 7. I believe that Councillor Northern is going to speak to this one as a ward member and not as a committee member. So this is P/FUL/2024/02884 Redlands Community Sports Hub, Dorchester Road, Weymouth, DT3 5AW. And this will be introduced by Matthew, again, so that's a hat trick. We do have one speaker on this, Martin Kimberley. So I'll call you after the presentation, Martin. To you, Matthew. Thanks.
Okay, this application is by Active Dorset. It's been reported to the planning committee because the land is owned by Dorset Council. The application is for refurbishment of an existing artificial grass pitch. They're called AGPs in the report. Construction of a new floodlit AGP, erection of maintenance building, toilet, a new spectator area, new pedestrian path around the perimeter of the site, relocation of practice cricket nets, a new cricket match wicket, and it also seeks permission for an overflow car park on reinforced grass mulching as well as landscaping works. So it's 2 miles north of Weymouth. The site is 13.5 hectares. It's located on the east side of Dorchester Road, and it's bound by the railway on the east side of the site. To the south, there are residential properties of Greenway Road, and to the north, we have Wey Valley Academy. The site has a 2-storey sports centre building, which contains 2 sports halls, squash courts, activity rooms, fresh cafe and changing rooms. These are the 2 existing artificial grass pitches. This is the newer one here, and this is the one that's proposed to be refurbished. Also, just to point out that there's a substation. Here, and the 2 current car parks are here and here, so east and south. The site is just accessed by this one road that comes into the site, and in total there's 80 car parking spaces and 4 badge spaces. This plan shows the existing site and the layout of the pitches. There are a total of 14 outdoor pitches, 12 of which are grass, and then 2 are the AGP artificial grass pitches on the east side of the site. This photo shows this is from the older artificial grass pitch here, looking towards the newer pitch, and you can see, just to give you a kind of impression of what it's like, both of them have got floodlighting around the perimeter, and you can see here they've also got mesh fencing as well. This photo is taken from further back within the site, stood near the college, and you're looking towards the 2 existing artificial grass pitches. As you can see, you've got the fencing there and you've got the floodlighting, and you've also got the band of trees here, which sits next to the substation. This is the sports centre building. It's utilitarian in design. And this is the proposed block plan, just showing the proposed works in colour. So just to talk you through these, we've got the refurbished existing artificial grass pitch here. That's the pitch which is proposed to be refurbished. The floodlights are proposed to be upgraded to LEDs, much better environmentally, and then also directionally as well, so that they focus on the pitch and have less light spill. This is the new artificial grass pitch. Again, that would be surrounded by mesh fencing and 6 new floodlights, also LEDs. To the east of that block would be a toilet block and maintenance building. And there's also a spectator area as well on the west side. You can see here there's a path around the perimeter of the site, and that's useful because at the moment there isn't a designated place for people to walk, and you don't want people walking across pitches. There's also formalisation of this access north of the site and northwest of the site as well. And this is the overflow car park with the 120 spaces proposed, and that's on, I think they used to call it grasscrete, but it's kind of reinforced grass matting. And this just strips the proposal back again, just to show proposals in a bit clearer detail. You can see the proposed works kind of concentrated in the southeast corner of the site. This photo shows the location of the proposed artificial grass pitch, which I'll just come on to in a bit more detail, but you're looking here east towards the existing trees hiding the substation and the two existing artificial grass pitches. As you turn to look south, see here the new artificial grass pitch would be in this location, and I'm just pointing out the boundary trees around the side of the site where there are residential properties, and you'll note from the report that there has been an objection about on amenity grounds, in terms of lighting and noise. So that photo was taken looking east here, where the existing trees are along the access road. Just looking at the new grass pitch. This is the maintenance building here. It would have toilets within that block. The spectator area would be on the west side of the pitch, and you've got those 6 floodlights around the outside of the pitch. They're LEDs designed to focus on the pitch itself. The existing trees on the east side of the site would be retained here next to the overflow car park. These are the proposed floodlights. They are 15-metre tall columns, directional LEDs, and there's a 4.5-metre mesh fence around the proposed grass pitch, and a small mesh fence around the spectator area of the pitch. This is the refurbished grass pitch. Just to point out, the spectator areas on the proposed spectator area on the west side here, and this pitch has been designed so that it can be subdivided in 2 here, just to increase the kind of usability of that, so that it can be used, one larger pitch or 2 smaller pitches, however people want to use it. There is an existing woodland block along the east side of the site next to the railway, and as part of the proposals, there's this bit in orange here is proposed to be planted up with new trees and wildflower plantings. So there's an extension of that landscaping block on the east side of the site. And this plan just shows the landscaping in a bit more detail. The orange area is what we're talking about. Expansion wraps around the northeast corner of the site. You've also got a lot of tree planting around the perimeter of the site, including to the rear of the properties on Dorchester Road, and in total there's 49 new trees proposed. This is the storage building. Not a lot to say about this building. It's again a utilitarian building. It's clad, and it would be coloured juniper green as set out on the drawings. The key planning issues set out in the officer's report. In terms of the principle of development, the proposals would be compatible with the existing use of the site, and they would enhance sport provision on the site. Sport England, a statutory consultee, they were consulted. They have no objections subject to conditions, and those conditions, there's 3 which are in the officer's report, conditions 10, 11 and 12. They require a management and maintenance scheme for the proposed pitches to make sure that they are maintained in line with the specifications of it, and they're replaced when they need to be. Condition 11 is about the community use agreement to ensure that the facilities aren't just used for schools, they're also a benefit to the local community, and it includes things like costings in there as well, details which need to be provided. And they also had a condition about the fill material on the pitches to make sure that it doesn't contaminate the ground, and that's kind of like the plastic that goes into the artificial grass pitches. You see the kind of like plastic bubbles, and just making sure that doesn't get out of the site itself. So all those conditions are proposed in the recommendation. The principle is acceptable. In terms of the character of the area, there would be very limited intrusion of the development. The key things you're going to see are the floodlights and the mesh fencing, and that will be seen within the context of the existing floodlighting and fencing. The conclusion is the development is compatible with the existing character. Amenity has been carefully considered. The floodlighting has been sensitively designed so that it minimises light spill, and there's planning conditions to manage the lighting as well in terms of the hours that it can be used. And the existing lighting is upgraded so that it's kind of shrouded to kind of limit the light spill on the surrounding area. There is one objection from a neighbouring resident. They raised concern with the lighting, the light spill, and the noise disturbance. Officers have reviewed that and considered the scheme as acceptable in terms of amenity. The closest residential property is 70 metres away from the new lighting. There are those conditions on there about the management of lighting, and they are directional LEDs. In terms of noise, there would be there's extra car parking on the site, but there's not necessarily a huge uplift in the amount of people that are expected to use this site. The car parking isn't considered to have a significant adverse effect on residential amenity, and the site is obviously used for car parking and access at the moment. In terms of flood risk and drainage, the proposals are acceptable subject to standard conditions and highway safety, access and parking. There aren't any identified highway safety or capacity issues. There's sufficient car parking proposed. There's 120 new spaces on the expanded car parking area, and as part of the conditions, there's a requirement to encourage transport by non-car modes through the travel plan. So that encourages people to use bikes, walk, and public transport to get to the site. There's no objection from highways, and the application is acceptable subject to conditions on highway and transport. In terms of trees and landscaping, there would be suitable hard and soft landscaping. You can see that around the outside and perimeter of the site. There's a substantial uplift in the number of trees. In terms of biodiversity, this scheme is one that was submitted after the 10% biodiversity net gain requirement came in, so it does apply, and it does achieve biodiversity net gain on site. There's a standard conditions on that for details to come through at a later stage, but biodiversity net gain is measured in habitat areas and then linear habitat areas. There's a kind of 15% increase for habitat areas, and there's a 111% increase for linear habitats. That's a lot in percentage terms, but it's quite a small bit of hedging at the moment, which is kind of making that look a lot higher. But it is that's a substantial benefit of the scheme, particularly in the context of the ecological and nature emergencies. There's been assessment on protected species and bats, and concerns on the lighting impact on bats has been assessed, and it's found that there wouldn't be any harm to protected species through the new lighting and the conditions that are recommended. There is also on the update sheet an updated condition there. The council's natural environment team has recently this week signed the certificate of approval. So that's proposed to be conditioned in the usual way with the preliminary ecological appraisal. So the recommendation here is to grant planning permission. It includes the caveat here on the MPPF. So again, officers would review the implications, but from a review of the consultation draft, there's nothing in there that indicates we're refusing the scheme or different conditions, but we do need to check. The key conditions, we have the standard conditions there, but time limit, approved plans, the details of hard and soft landscaping, usual surface water conditions. There's conditions there on car and cycle parking to be provided. The travel plan condition to manage journeys by more sustainable modes of transport, construction environmental management plan, and the three conditions here that I've talked through from Sport England about the management and maintenance scheme, community use agreement, and the infill containment measures. We also have conditions on a horticultural method statement because this works close to some existing trees, the approved materials, and the floodlights as well. And you know they have the floodlight condition has just been tweaked slightly in the update sheet. That's just to make it clear that it's about the existing, upgrading the existing lights and the new lights as well. And then we've also got the preliminary ecological appraisal edition, which is from the next certificate. So there's the recommendations it's out in the update sheet, and that's it. There isn't a recommendation A and B on this one. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Matthew. I now call on the first public speaker, which is Martin Kimberley for Active Dorset, which are the applicants. Martin, you have 3 minutes from when you settled, and I'll give you a warning at 2 minutes 30 seconds just to wind up. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, committee, for your time today. I'm here representing Active Dorset, the charity that operates Redlands on behalf of Dorset Council. This proposal was a result of an extended period where Redlands was at risk of closure, and then there was public interest in keeping it open with petitions and consultation leading to a desire to improve the services and facilities there and retain them for the community. Our objectives as a charity are to provide high quality facilities for Dorset communities so that they may be more active with a specific focus on helping people with different backgrounds who may face more barriers to becoming active. There will be access to the facilities for all the community, but we'll seek to deliver priority sessions and opportunities for specific groups, which will include women and girls, people with a disability, individuals living with long-term conditions, and those living in deprived circumstances. We know from national evaluation and our own Dorset delivery what a difference access to high quality facilities makes to the likelihood of someone to become and then stay active. We've seen how community pride in community facilities broadens the reach of facilities, with many opportunities flowing from what on paper may seem to be just a football or cricket pitch. Just at Redlands, for example, there's already over 20 volunteers supporting the cafe, which provides free soft play to local people, allowing parents who may not have the resources to access other offers to give their early years children a fantastic start towards an active life. This proposal is central to the overall offer at Redlands and will enable football and cricket to develop in the community. The Dorset playing pitch strategy and local football facility plan both highlight the need for these facilities in Weymouth area, where a significant shortage is identified, leaving residents unable to access facilities taken for granted elsewhere. As well as formal sport, we're very keen to support informal activity, and we've included a safe off-road circular path to allow walkers, joggers, pram pushers, scooters, and learn to ride cyclists a safe space. Again, we've learned from our work at other sites what a key element this can be as an entry point to people becoming more active. Active Dorset already work closely with NHS partners, and with these improvements, we'll be able to continue to support pre-habilitation and rehabilitation in partnership with them. Local schools and special schools will also directly benefit from access to these facilities, increasing the quality of their PE and wider offer. Our work to positively impact on the climate change agenda is very broad, and we've already made some significant improvements at Redlands, solar energy, for example.
30 seconds.
High priority in our work is to encourage active travel where possible, do what we can to maximise that at Redlands. Our desire to impact on that agenda is central to our work as a charity. If we're able to deliver these much needed community facilities, we'll be delivering our charitable objectives. We will continue to seek to be the best neighbour we possibly can be to the immediate residents, provide high quality opportunities for local people, support the prevention work of local statutory partners, help the inactive and less active to live healthily, and help deliver a range of facilities in the community is genuinely proud of. And that's a mix of things that makes it a great place to live and work.
You just about managed it.
I think, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Martin. If you'd like to take a seat, we now call Sir Northern, who's going to speak as a ward member, and after which he will leave the room during the debate and the voting, and then we will call him back in. Over to you, Councillor Northern.
Thank you very much. I've got several interests in this. My house was shown on the map. My house back garden backs onto the site. I'm very fortunate in that respect. It's been a site which has offered great development for my kids and for continuing with grandchildren now using the soft play facility, and children's parties are being re-hosted. It's revitalised the area. It's great to see people walking down Dorchester Road with pushchairs again. The only complaint that I get from residents about Redlands is when there's a big event, and that includes Sunday football, there isn't enough parking there. And they park all over the place, much to the annoyance of my residents. I meant to take some pictures the last time because they were actually parking on green spaces that are part of the landscaping on the nearby estate. I will get my camera out next time it happens, because there's no excuse now with this overflow car parking going in, much needed. The additional sports pitches was something that was always promised. Weymouth doesn't have any other indoor public facility for recreation, public. There are schools that sometimes open. And it's also the major site for competitions. Because of the size of its facilities, it really does provide competition basis. And that side of things is brilliant. And I'd like to see it continuing. And the further development of more pitches will support that. Dorset Council is supporting the development of this facility, obviously, and the roof work is nearly complete. And what's been brilliant is in the last week or so, the entranceway and the driveway has been resurfaced. So it's now looks like a car park rather than a rough patch of ground. It doesn't quite reach these new proposed car parking area, but perhaps that'll be a later addition. And the other thing I'd point out on that map is the linkage through to Way Valley School and the other schools on that site. That used to be there. I was a teacher at Broadway Secondary Modern, and our kids used to go to Redland Sports Centre to do their games. Since then, the school's had its own facilities and that's declined. There's still an opportunity. But I think that will also provide the opportunity for further car parking when there are big events. And of course, there's a tennis centre as well. Lastly, Beryl bikes could go on that site and should be, and I recommend the council looks at that. And even more lastly, we're even providing support for the Afghan community in Weymouth with them taking part in activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Northern. Matthew, is there any comments you wish to make or come back on either of those two speakers? I don't believe there are any questions being asked of you. So
No, nothing to add.
Nothing to add? Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Northern will now leave the room. For you when we finish, Councillor Northern. So are there any questions for the planning officer, please, from members? Presentation required?
He's not here.
No, in that case, I'll open the floor to debate, please. Who would like to start with this one? Councillor Christopher.
I would like to propose approval.
Thank you very much, Councillor Christopher. Yeah, in accordance with the update sheet as well. Thank you. We need to be clear on that, otherwise there'll be a problem later. I think Councillor Shortell had his hand up as well. So, Councillor Shortell.
I'd be delighted. Councillor David Shortell, West Morsland, three-legged cross. Yes, I'd love to second this proposition. According to the update.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to speak on this before we go to the vote?
There are about 5 proposers and seconders at the same time.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Weller.
Councillor Weller, Wyke and Rodwell, can we just extend our thanks to Martin and all the work that they've done, because they've made a great difference to the sports facilities in Weymouth now.
Sure, he's taken that on board.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a proposer, which is Councillor Christopher, and we have a seconder, Councillor Shortell. Can I ask all those in favour, please raise your hands. And again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Therefore, it is approved in accordance with the officer's recommendations and the update sheet. Right, moving on to item. We get Councillor Northern back in, please. Matthew, are you going that way?
I'll grab it.
Oh, thank you very much. Well,
All done.
just pause for a second while Councillor Northern comes back in. I'll give Councillor Northern another minute to arrive. If not, we will take the next item on the agenda.
Going down the pub, probably.
Fingers crossed.
We'll be there fast.
Please, can I remind folks about conversations will be picked up by the microphone? Thank you.
Chairman, I request that we proceed.
Councillor Christopher, I do take that on board, and I was going to give Councillor Northam another 30 seconds, but I think we will take the next item on the agenda unless he comes in just before I start. Okay, we now move to agenda item 8, which is P/FUL/2024/04683. Bus shelter, Dorset Mount Pleasant Park and Ride Link Road to Park and Ride Weymouth. That's a mouthful. GT3 5GD. This will be introduced by Planning Officer Steve Tapscott. We don't have any speakers on this one, so if you're ready, Steve.
Oh, well, that's one pick.
Okay.
I think I'm ready.
Technology issue, I believe. Bear with members. You okay?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Thank members for your patience. Over to you then, Steve.
Thank you. Yes, apologies for that interlude. I noticed there's no mics here, but it's a small room, so hopefully you'll hear me okay. But if not, then do let me know. So yes, this site is the bus shelter, which is over at Weymouth Park and Ride. Bus shelter is a play on words. It doesn't literally mean a bus shelter. It's a shelter that's provided within a decommissioned bus. So it's for rough sleepers. It's an established site, and they're looking to relocate an existing workshop on the site, as well as install a new cabin for a reception and meeting room. Just take you through the site location. So, so there's a site with the outline in red. Give you a bit of context. Weymouth Relief Road is just over here, and that heads northwards towards Littlemore and then onwards to Dorchester. This building down here will be the Sainsbury's petrol station and the former Beefeater restaurant down here. Bit of planning context for you. So the site is marked by the red star in the centre. It's part of a historic landfill site that was then turned into the Park and Ride. Around to the north and to the east is Logmore Triple SI. And on the western flank of the site, right along the site's boundary, is an area of existing and high potential ecological network. You'll see an allocated employment site down towards the southwest. So that'll be the New Look offices predominantly. And then you can see that black line there, which I've labelled the DDB, the defined development boundary or the settlement boundary of Weymouth. So everything on the left side of that black line is in the settlement. Everything on the right, which includes this particular site, is technically in the open countryside. So for additional background, the reason why it's come before you today is because it's council-owned land. In 2021, a temporary planning permission was obtained to use the site for the stationing of mobile accommodation units for rough sleepers,
with associated facilities. So I'll talk you through what those facilities are in a minute, and with subsequent reversion to park and ride parking when that goes. So there's 2 phases to the site. I'll show you that on the site plan in a minute. And at the time in 2021, the council agreed that it's acceptable in principle, despite being technically in the countryside. We do have policies that allow for essential development in countryside locations, and it was justified on that basis. So there were conditions attached to that temporary permission. First one is to limit the time, which is to January 2028. So it's got a little over 3 years still to go. Once the use ceases, the site has to be cleared within 3 months. There's a condition to say no stacking of the units, and that's in the interests of local character and visual amenity. There was a biodiversity mitigation and net gain plan submitted with that application that got conditioned, and essentially that really relates to bats, because the proximity to the SSSI is habitat and foraging areas, so light interference can affect bats. So it's a condition to reduce those impacts. And there's a condition to require the submission of a landfill gas investigation report, which was submitted and it was signed off. And then finally, the layout has been tweaked slightly through non-material amendment applications. There's been a couple of those. I'll show you in a moment the existing layout as it is now. But I'll just take you through a couple of photos first of all. I'll put the location plan here to get your bearings. This first photo is looking from the southwest towards the northeast, so from this bottom left corner of the site. You can see it's well contained. It's neat and tidy. The next picture below looks from the northwest towards the southeast. So from this top left corner here, you can see just in the background there's the bus, and then various buildings around the side. Oh, next slide. This first one, this top one is from the west looking to the east, at the top of the site. So along this road at the top, not a lot to say about that really. And then this bottom slide is taken from the eastern elevation, and that shows the bus in the background and with the new reception building that they're seeking approval for today. So the existing layout is here. It's slightly grainy, I'm afraid, because of when I screenshotted it, but essentially it's accommodation in a horseshoe shape. So these units are on the top and the side, and a couple of these at the bottom are accommodation, 2 people in each one. So it's a total of 12 people, up to 12 at the moment, staying there. There's a unit at the bottom left here, which I believe is a learning centre. And in the middle is a kitchen and a mess room type of building. Got the bus on this side and an existing workshop up here and a laundry facility down here. And right at the north, that's where all the parking goes. So I'll try and be clever and flip through to the next plan, which shows the differences and what they're trying to do. So that works. There we go. So the main differences are the area of parking is slightly smaller, and that's to make way for the workshop that was over here to move over to here, and then looking to relocate the bins next to that as well. And in place of where that workshop currently is going to be the new reception building. So in order to fit all this in, we're going to have to enlarge the site. And you can see the existing eastern extent of the red line here, left side, and they're looking to extend the site by around 1 metre to the right, or to the east, sorry, as I should probably say. And that's about it in terms of the differences. The following plans show what it would look like. So that's the eastern elevation looking towards the existing bus. You can see the existing workshop here, which will be replaced by the reception cabin. The next elevation, very little difference here, except to see the new reception cabin there in place of the workshop. And over here, that's where the new workshop, sorry, not the new workshop, the workshop that they're moving will go. And then this is the west elevation, again showing the workshop, and behind it you can see the reception building there. And then the southern elevation, no change at all, except for an ever so slight, you can see that this fence here would be deepened to allow for that extra metre site area. So in terms of the key considerations, principle of development is the first one. Well, this relates to an existing established temporary permission for the site, and this would tie in with it. This would continue to meet an identified need for rough sleepers, so happy in that respect. In terms of scale design, impacts on local character, there's not an awful lot I can say about it really. That canter through the existing photographs, the comparison between the plans, there's not a lot of difference. And I think for this context, whilst it's in the countryside, it's acceptable, and we can add the same condition as on the temporary consent to ensure no stacking of units, and we can ensure that the site is cleared at the end of any temporary period. In terms of impacts on neighbouring occupiers, well, we're several hundred metres away from the nearest resident, and the occupants themselves, there'll be no effect on their amenity. In fact, it would probably be an improvement on their amenity by having this extra facility. Highways have come back with no concerns in terms of impacts on the wider network, safety on the site, access to it, or parking. Ecology, we can recondition the same ecological report and make sure that bat mitigation rolls over to this as well. This doesn't qualify for biodiversity net gain because of the size of the site, de minimis in fact. And since the last consent was issued, the issue of Chesil and the Fleet recreation mitigation is now a material consideration for us. But because this development wouldn't result in any additional people at the site, it's not relevant to us today. And the final issue is contaminated land. So this is, like I said before, former landfill site. It's been capped, it's been hard surfaced. And as part of the previous permission, the applicants came in with a landfill gas report, which was signed off by our environmental health team. Now, that report was prepared by a firm called WPA Consulting. And so the applicant has gone back to WPA and they've said, is this going to be all right? And they've written and they've said, yes, it will be all right, provided the new units are demountable and provided there are minimal impacts on the ground, penetration works to the ground. So armed with that information, I've gone back to environmental health, but they no longer have the expertise to assess that in-house. So their stance on these issues, particularly with landfill gas, is to refer it to independent consultants. But there is an issue in so much that the council's go-to consultant for this happens to be WPA Consulting. So we've got an unfortunate and unenviable situation where WPA could effectively be marking their own homework. So I haven't gone down that route for understandable reasons, but I think we can have a bit of pragmatism about this particular scenario because, well, first of all, this is charity and charities don't tend to have deep pockets. If they were to go to a new consultant, they would be charged for that service. Consultants would probably have to review all the existing data and take a view on this application. And that just seems a bit disproportionate. There are several factors as well. Bearing in mind this is a temporary consent they're seeking. It would only be for 3 years. It's very minor. So the existing site has already been assessed and signed off. This is essentially for 1 metre strip extra. And the applicant has confirmed to us in writing that all the structures would be demountable and there would be no penetrative groundworks either. So with that in mind, I'm confident to recommend that we can approve. And that takes me to the recommendation, which is the same as what Matt was saying earlier for his applications. Given the pending new MPPF, we put this in. So if there are any material changes or if there are any differences, we will discuss them with the Chair of Planning. And so in terms of conditions, it's a standard time limit, the approved plans, another standard condition. We are proposing that the use and the land of the land and the structures shall be as per the site plan that you saw earlier. And we can reuse that no stacking of units condition as well. We can condition the continued compliance with the contaminated land and ground risk assessment report. And you'll see the asterisk there. This is condition 4, as amended on the update sheet. So on the update sheet, you'll see that we're proposing to amend that condition slightly just to add the extra bit on no penetrative groundworks. Other conditions are continued compliance with the biodiversity mitigation plan, again, to get that mitigation in place for the bats. And 6th condition is to time limit the permission to tie in with the original 2021 permission to January 2028, whereupon condition 7 would require removal of structures within 3 months. That concludes my presentation.
Lovely, thank you very much for that. Before we move on, just a slight technicality that I need some clarification on, please. For this, Councillor Northam did miss my announcement of the item, but I don't think he's missed much of the presentation at all. So,
Chair, thank you, Chair. So Phil Crowther, Committee Legal Advisor. My understanding is that Councillor Northam only missed the introduction and the location slides about where the development is, and probably given where Councillor Northam's ward is. It's probably familiar with the site, unless he tells me otherwise. I don't think as long as he's satisfied, he has all the information he needs to make a decision.
This area used to be in my town council ward. It isn't in the following the adjustment, but it used to be. So I've taken interest in this site in the past.
okay, so I'm quite happy for you to sit and comment and vote on this application. So, first of all, are there any clarifications or questions you have for the planning officer? No?
Could I raise one thing that came forward to me? This site features in the Weymouth Neighbourhood Plan, which is now with DC. And what came forward to us was that the land surrounding the park and ride is a nature recovery area. And this was part of the Weymouth Relief Road, offset the environmental impact. So the area outside is a nature recovery area, which doesn't really add any greater demand, but it sort of emphasizes that that area is less developable, whereas the area inside the perimeter berm has potential for a variety of uses. So this is a temporary site, is really good. It provides a really valuable service for rough sleepers who are transiting or needing some additional care and consideration, and hopefully transiting into the lantern type facilities.
Sorry, is there a question?
No, there wasn't a question.
There wasn't a question. Okay, perhaps you'd save that one for debate. Any questions or clarifications required? No. Okay. In that case, I'll throw the floor open for debate. Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Weller, Rodwell and White. I would like us to go to a vote. It's a great shame that we need this facility, but we do, and it fulfills a very, very useful agenda item. So I'd like to propose that we grant, subject to conditions and subject to anything that transpires this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Weller. Councillor Lou O'Leary.
I'm happy to second.
Second that, okay. So we have a proposal and a second. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, so all those in favour of, has it gone up already? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. So it's recommendation carried in accordance as well with the update sheet. Lovely. Thank you, Anne. Right, moving on to the last one then. Number 9 is P/FUL/2024/06068. The strangest addresses I've ever had to read out. Weymouth Beach, south west of the pier, bandstand opposite the Prince Regent Hotel. So over to you, Rob, please.
At this moment, Chair, while we just
Sorry.
change places.
Okay. Members? So remind members, please, and we'll pick up the phone, we'll pick you up. So will the chair. Thank you. I think we're almost there.
Morning, councillors. I'm bringing before you an application for the siting of the wild sauna unit on a piece of a site on Weymouth Beach to the Pier and Bandstand, and the reason for it being in front of committee is because the land is Dorset Council. Speak up. So the site itself is southwest of the Pier and Bandstand and opposite Prince Regent Hotel alongside the yard. There's an aerial photo there to show its location. There's a red line around the site. The site over summer months is occupied by a shepherd's hut. And this would be a continuation of sorts of the building being on exactly the same site. So the site plan showing the size of the sauna itself and the a small shed which will sit alongside the sauna. So there's some photos here of the site itself. This particular photo is from the west looking towards the beach. This sauna itself would sit here. Alongside there's a public notice sign currently just off the camera there. Again, from the south looking north, and the site would be, I'm sorry, I should get the cursor there, but basically in this location here. And another photo of the site looking towards Prince Regent Hotel, and there's a cenotaph just there. And lastly, from the north looking south along the Esplanade Walkway. There is a shepherd's hut over summer months, and I'll put that for information purposes. Also, we are aware that the sauna has already been located on the site. Our understanding is that the agent is utilising permitted development rights for 28-day period for the siting. So hopefully that's of use for this presentation. So the proposal itself is for the siting of the sauna unit, associated steps and an ancillary shed. It's from the period of 1st November to 28th February, so over winter. The sauna would be wood-fired and sit on a trailer, transportable. It's approximately ½ metre longer than the shepherd's hut, which is currently on the site. There's a small area of decking with steps to be erected alongside the sauna so as to access it from the beach. The timber shed that would sit alongside it is approximately 1 metre by 1 metre and then 1.7 metres high. Quite hard to see that, but there's a site plan showing the small shed to sit alongside and then steps and a decking area shown in the photo. Elevation plans of the sauna and the shed. Key constraints for the site: it is within the Weymouth DDB and Weymouth Town Centre. It's within the neighbourhood plan area. The land is Dorset Council owned. It's also within flood zones 2, 3 and 3A, and it's within the setting of a number of heritage assets, namely the cenotaph, the promenade shelter to the south, Prince Regent Hotel, Victoria Terrace, and is within the conservation area. There's also the use of the land over summer periods for a shepherd's hut, which is being considered. So I'll go on to the key issues. So the principal development is considered to be acceptable. It is in a sustainable location. It wouldn't conflict with the existing use of the site. The Shepherd's Hut would occupy the site on the summer and out of season for the alternative period of the calendar year. It is considered that it would be supported by local plan policy around the economic offering, being that it would diversify the commercial offering, sitting alongside a number of eating establishments and hotel holiday uses in the surrounding area. The sauna itself is also considered acceptable in terms of its design and impact to visual amenity. Being fairly modest in form, it would be a continuation of the use of the site for a sort of small temporary unit, and it's also considered that it wouldn't be harmful to the sort of assessing of the surrounding listed buildings or the conservation area, and would be akin to similar buildings which may have been sited there in the past historically along the beach. From a transport standing, it's considered acceptable within a location, accessible by the adjacent footpath, cycle network. There is a bus station in close proximity in both directions. Considering residential amenity, it is considered to be sufficiently distant from residential properties, and the environmental health team have reviewed the application, considering the use of the wood burning stove, and consider that any emissions would be dispersed appropriately. We've received no objections to the scheme with 16 support stations. Were lighting to be installed, as we're aware, it's not currently proposed. A condition has been applied for that to be agreed. The applicant has helpfully submitted a sustainability statement indicating the sort of credentials of the sauna unit itself, and also the sourcing of sustainable sourcing of wood, which has been certified from the local area. In terms of flood risk, the area, the sort of area surrounding the sauna is noted as being in flood risk zones 2, 3, and 3A. The scheme has been reviewed by the council's flood risk team and consider it to be acceptable on the grounds that it would be sort of easily transportable were a flood event to occur, and that would be the decking and the shed at the same time as the sauna unit on the trailer. A flood risk plan has also been submitted during the life of this application. So the summary, it is acceptable in all material terms, and we would not consider that there'd be any reasons to warrant refusal of the application, and therefore the recommendation is to grant approval, and obviously considering what has previously come before you today in terms of the NPPF and delegating authority to the planning chair. A standard set of conditions, albeit this one has already been cited, the emergency flood plan to be sort of in accordance with that, which has been submitted. The sauna unit would be for recreational sauna use and not for residential. The unit would be removed after 10 years, or reapplied for permission. A lighting scheme to be agreed, and the unit to remain on site from the period of November to February. Lastly, that no additional development would occur around the sauna. That's
Thank you very much for that, Rob. I have a question, but I think I know the answer.
Okay.
The decking and the shed will be removed along with the hut for the summer.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that. Any questions or clarifications for the officer, please? Okay, Councillor Borden. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. I was looking that way at the time.
Oh, well, yeah, Linda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth. It's just a quick one. There's a comment on your slides that and their environmental health implications and that emissions will be dispersed, but that is actually in addition to emissions that wouldn't be there otherwise. Okay. I mean, just somebody who has asthma and walks past might not be too happy, for example. Take the point, it's a outdoor area, but.
Wish to comment on that? So.
I don't think we would. I mean, my understanding is the environmental health team have considered, the use in a public setting. I guess, along with us being able to control other forms, nuisance on the beach would be difficult. But my understanding is that they have considered that it would be no harm.
Okay. A question for the officer, Councillor Christopher.
Yes, indeed. Could the officer take us back to the piece where it mentioned the Prince Regent, etc., and listed buildings, etc., for us all to consider?
Is that a useful photo?
There was a piece of text that mentioned the War Memorial, the cenotaph.
Yeah. Yeah.
That will do.
Back to.
Right.
There's it.
That one?
Yes, indeed. Chair, I have to recall an incident where it was necessary in a Dorset town for a town clerk to appeal for silence outside of a public house on Remembrance Sunday. And I note you are nodding your head that you remember the incident. So, the question I have is it possible to put in a condition that the sauna shall not operate on Remembrance Sunday? That is my question.
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. Can I pass that over to
Yeah.
officer?
Yeah, Chair. So we did actually have this discussion, didn't we, Rob, about this point, because I think someone else had flagged it with us. There's a slight difficulty kind of conditioning it because the date changes every year. Whether we and sort of the reasonableness of a condition, Phil may have a view, bearing in mind we are in a public location. But I think we did confirm with the operator that they, am I right in thinking?
Yeah, no, sorry. Subsequent to that comment being raised, the applicant has submitted a statement to suggest they won't be operating during the hours of, I guess, remembrance. Not that means specific about the day itself.
I think,
so I guess that
with respect, it should be possible to have a condition whereby the facility does not operate on the Sunday closest to the 11th of November each year.
I think we can probably come up with a formal wording. We've got a delegation anyway to delegate to agree with you, Chair, so we can come up with a wording condition and send that to you, Chair, before.
Thank you. If you're happy with that, Councillor Christopher. I do understand.
If the condition can be included, then I'm sure members around this room today will be content.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Weller first then, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Weller, Rodwell and Wyke. In following on from what Councillor Christopher said, in Weymouth actually, as well as the big memorial service on the Sunday, as it's appointed, they do have a smaller service there actually on the 11th of November. It only takes about half an hour, but it is there and it's quite well attended. So you may want to include that within the condition. I don't foresee it as a problem, but there is that service as well. Those are the only two that fall within that time. I'm looking at other Weymouth members. I can't think offhand when I can't think immediately when the Merchant Navy Memorial Service takes place, which is just to the left of the photograph there. The Merchant Navy memorial site. I think that is within the summer months, so outside this period, but I'm not altogether sure. You might want to make a note
Yeah, it's in June as well.
to check that.
This is an informative rather than a question for the.
Well, the question is, can you check that just
Thank
to
you.
check?
Thank
Can you
Just to be
check that
clear,
date?
Could we check
Because
that,
there
please?
may be 3 dates everything else I'm thinking of is either much further away or not within that designated
That's
period.
totally reasonable. I'll come to you in a minute, Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Northern has hand up.
It was following on really. It'll be Weymouth Town Council placing the lease on the operator, and it could be a condition of the lease.
Very much. Can we keep these 2 questions for the officer?
Yeah, can we not just put a condition in that they liaise with the town council on a yearly basis for relevant dates?
Sorry, Chair, we
As
could.
opposed to us trying to set dates.
Yeah,
Yes, I think
that
makes
was the
sense.
difficulty that we had, Chair. We can't, by condition they laid, we could just put an informative on for them to be mindful of the location of it and to liaise with the town council. The town council ultimately, if they've got control of the lease, have control of it.
Yeah.
So rather than using a planning condition,
Yes.
I mean, we've already pointed that out to them and they've provided a response to say they wouldn't be operational at that time anyway. So, you know, I think that might be the best way forward, that we just put a planning informative on and that we leave that for the town council to deal with as the
Thank you. I think that has been brought up before the actual meeting, so it was addressed. But thank you, members, for that. That's very helpful. And if you're content with what we've just offered, are you okay with that, or do you want to discuss any further?
Oh, another question.
Oh, okay. Is this question? Go ahead.
Could you summarise the comments from members of the public? I know the Civic Society were in support.
They're already on the order.
Have I misreading that bit? Sorry.
I just think they've already been provided. That was all. I
And
just
they're in
wondered
the
why
report.
it's already in the report. So I really hope the members have read these things rather than question the officer. Unless it's about the text.
I think
that's there, then by all means. But
yeah, I mean, generally the benefits were of an economic nature, or health and well-being. And obviously there's a community benefit of the people generally coalescing, around that sort of.
I know it mentions the Weymouth Civic Society, but there were, I don't know, 6 to 10 public responses.
I think excuse me, Robert. I think they've already been written and read by the members, I hope. So I'm not quite sure what the question is really on this one. It's more of a statement about something we've all got access to already. So sorry, Councillor.
All right.
Trying to move this one on. I think unless there's any serious questions, I thank you, Councillor Christopher, for bringing that up. That was very useful. In that case, I'll move to debate. I'll open the floor, and Councillor Weller had her hand up first.
Councillor Weller, White and Rodwell. I'd like to go to the vote and support the application. It's a popular open swimming area, and I'm sure will be well used and well appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. And anything else? We're just checking that it's in accordance with the update sheet and the conditions.
Yes,
and the informative.
And the informative.
And anything else.
And anything else. Lovely.
Well, sorry. Through you, Chair, the proposal has to be precise.
Yes, it does.
So
So
if you wish to propose with a condition governing memorial services and remembrance, you need to do that. If you're content with us to deal with it by way of informative, so that it's dealt with between the owner and between the town council and the tenant, then that's what you need to put forward. Thank you, Chair.
I would like to propose that we grant the application with the applicant applying to the town council for the date on which it would be inappropriate to operate, and the licence being thus applied.
But through you, Chair, that could only be done by way of an informative. We couldn't have a condition to that effect. So if you're happy with that being dealt with through informative, absolutely, we can take that forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
I'm happy to second. Bathing's been part of Weymouth's heritage for hundreds of years. I think this adds something really positive to that. So second, Councillor Weller's proposals as stated.
Okay, in that case, we have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you, and that is again unanimous.
Let's just hope Deputy Prime Minister's in favour.
Just before we go too far, thank you. So that has been approved in accordance with the update sheet and the informative. In that case, we move on to items 6 and 7. Item 10, urgent items. There are no urgent items. 11, exempt business. There is no exempt business. So in that case, I call the meeting closed at midday and 53 seconds.
Merry Christmas.